Thanks for tuning into my channel. Don't forget to click on like or subscribe if you like what you see and you want to be notified when I release future videos. This video is a walkthrough implementation of how to configure DNS settings in Microsoft Azure. This lab is taken from the Microsoft Learning GitHub repo for the AZ700 Azure Networking exam. So in this scenario, we will configure DNS resolution for the fictitious company, Contoso Ltd. We're going to create a private DNS zone named contoso.com. We're going to link the virtual networks for registration and resolution. And then we're going to create 2 virtual machines and test that the configuration of these machines have registered, auto-registered to our new private zone. The list of tasks below are what we need to complete in order to successfully complete this implementation. So we have task 1, create a private DNS zone. Task 2, link subnet for auto registration. Task 3, create virtual machines to test the configuration. And task 4, we're going to verify that those records are showing up in our new DNS zone. And before we get started, quickly take a look at what is the use case or what is the purpose of us using these private DNS zones in Microsoft Azure. According to Microsoft documentation, Azure Private DNS provides us with a reliable and secure DNS service for managing and resolving domain names in a virtual network without the need to add a custom DNS solution. So by using private DNS zones, we can use our own custom domain names rather than just accepting the Azure provided default names that are get assigned to our devices today. The records that are contained in a private DNS zone, these are not resolvable from the public internet. DNS resolution against a private DNS zone will only work from the virtual networks that we link to it. So in the event that you need something that will also be resolvable over the internet, in that case, you would need something like a public DNS. You would need a public DNS service. However, we're focused on only what needs to be resolved within our virtual network, so the private DNS zone will suit our purposes here and meet our needs. So we can link that private DNS zone to one or more virtual networks by creating virtual network links, and we're going to enable the auto registration feature, so that way our management of the lifecycle for our DNS records will take place automatically for any virtual machines that get deployed in our virtual network. We will begin by reusing the resource group that was created in the previous lab demonstration, that resource group being Contoso Resource Group. Within that resource group, we previously deployed 3 different virtual networks, one being the core services VNet, the next one was the manufacturing VNet, as well as the research VNet, each with their own respective subnets. So we will begin by creating that private DNS zone by searching for our private DNS zone within the list of global services. And we will select it from the drop-down list. Next, we will click on Create Private DNS Zone. On our Basics tab for creating our private DNS zone, we want to ensure that we select the appropriate subscription, and from the drop-down box, we need to next select our resource group. If you don't already have a resource group created, you can use the Create New link for creating one, but I'm going to go with what I already have configured in the previous lab. Next, we need to give this zone a name. So we're going to name ours contoso.com. And we're going to select, we don't have the option here, it's already selected for us. Since this resource group is already deployed into the East US region, then this is the region where this private DNS zone is going to reside as well. Next, we will click on Review and Create. We won't be using any tabs for this demonstration, any tags, so we'll go ahead and click on Create, and that will kick off the deployment of our new private DNS zone. And I will pause and return as soon as that deployment is completed. And it looks like that deployment has completed. We'll click on Go to Resource. Next, we're going to go to, looks like we're in the contoso.com private DNS zone. Under the Settings menu, we're going to go to Virtual Network Links. And then finally, we see that we do not have any available virtual network links, but we'll go ahead and click on Add, so that way we can begin creating a link from this private DNS zone to our virtual network. We will name this link Core Services VNet link. No change to our subscription. We will link this to the virtual network named Core Services VNet. We will check the box to enable auto registration, and next we will click on OK. That will kick off the creation of our new virtual network link. Next, we will create a virtual network link for the manufacturing VNet. We will do that by clicking on Add. We will name this link Manufacturing VNet link. We will keep the same subscription. We will select the virtual network named Manufacturing VNet. We will check the box for Enable Auto Registration and then click on OK. If I click on Refresh here, I should see any virtual network links that have been created. Looks like the manufacturing virtual link is still in the process of being created. We will click on Add, and we're going to add one more virtual network link for our final virtual network, and we will name it Research VNet link. We don't need to make any changes to the subscription, but we will select Research VNet from our virtual network list. And then finally, we will enable auto registration on this configuration and select OK. We will give it a moment for the final virtual network link to complete the creation process. With verification that each of our respective virtual network links have successfully completed the creation process, we will now move on to creating our virtual machines to test out the configuration. In this task, we will utilize PowerShell within a Cloud Shell pane, and we will use Azure ARM templates to deploy those virtual machines. So with that being said, I will click on the Cloud Shell icon to request the Cloud Shell. And let me bring up this screen. And I'll go ahead and clear to get all of this extra verbiage off of the screen here. And I'm going to upload the templates that we will utilize for this deployment. Here we have Azure deploy.json. That's our first ARM template. Click on Open, and the upload has completed. We will click on the icon again and click on Upload, and we have a parameters file, and we will click on Open. And it looks like those files have successfully completed. If you are needing to have access to those files in case you want to follow along, you can have access to all of the files that are used as part of these labs through the link that I provided in the description of the video below. And here I can see successfully have. Awesome. Alrighty, so back at the Cloud Shell pane, I'm going to paste in commands that will allow me to kick off this deployment. Looks like I accidentally closed it here. I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. And I'm going to paste in the respective commands to get that rolling. So I'll go ahead and click on pause, and we will come back when that deployment of the virtual machines has completed. And it appears that our virtual machine deployment has kicked off successfully and has completed, as indicated by the messages that we see here, the output here on the PowerShell output. Finally, we are going to check those virtual machines, and we will verify that those records are appearing, that are present in the DNS zone. So first, we will select from the drop-down list, we will search for virtual machines. We will select it from the drop-down list, and here I can see that my two, test virtual machines have been created, and they have been placed into the resource group of Contoso Resource Group. We have public IP addresses on those machines. Click on one. Notice that in addition to the public IP address, we also have our private IP address information. And I see a little hint here that we have a DNS name as well. But we're going to go ahead and navigate to our private DNS zone, contoso.com, so we can verify that the host A records are present, that these are listed for both of our virtual machines. So we will do that by going to private DNS. We can type that in the search box here, or we can select it if it's in our recently accessed services. Here from the search results for our private DNS zone, we see that we have one domain, contoso.com. We have 3 different sets of records that have been created as part of contoso.com. We have 3 virtual networks, and we also have 3 virtual networks that have network links with auto registration implemented within this private DNS zone. So we'll go ahead and click on the zone, and in the overview, here I can see that we have DNS record information. I have a virtual machine named test VM1, and I have an A record that is present with an IP address, private IP address of 10.20.20.5. That looks good, that looks good, that looks good. And then I can see here test VM2. I have an A record for this, and I have a private IP address of 10.20.20.4. So let's test these DNS records, and let's try to access these VMs through RDP. So we're going to go to test VM1, go back to virtual machines. I'll go to test VM1, and I'm going to click on connect so I can launch an RDP to this virtual machine. Next, I'm going to try to connect through this RDP file that I've downloaded, and I'm going to type in the password. I know that my username for this VM is test user. Click on OK. And it looks like we've reached the front door. This looks good. That looks good. We have successfully, go ahead and click on yes, we have successfully been able to RDP into VM1. I'm going to do the same with test VM2. I'm going to go ahead and click on yes to accept the connections here. Privacy settings. All right. So we've successfully been able to log into our test VM1 as well as our test VM2. These are both, looks like these are both Windows Server virtual machines. So finally, we're going to open a command prompt on test VM1. And we're going to use NSLOOKUP tool to help us with DNS resolution. So navigating back to VM1, I'm going to launch here. It looks like I cannot access here we go. So I want CMD, launch a command prompt here. And what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to ping the VM named test VM2. First off, though, let me check first what our IP address is. ipconfig from the perspective of the virtual machine. Make sure we're doing okay here. And we see 10.20.20.5, which was what we found on the Azure portal as well. And we're going to verify that the IP address is the same as what we noted on the DNS zone. And that's test VM1 overview. And that's 10.20.20.5. Yes, that is matching the same same IP address. That is matching the same IP address that we verified on the Azure portal as well. So next we are going to enter a command to ping test VM2 using the fully qualified domain name for that device, which is testvm2.contoso.com. So we're going to ping. Going to send that ICMP ping test.contoso.com. Observe that these pings have failed because on test VM2 we have not enabled the Windows firewall to allow inbound ICMP ping requests inbound to the virtual machine. So that's the reason why we are seeing our ping request timeout. However, we can use the NS lookup tool, and we should get this same IP address 10.20.20.4 for our test VM2. That's the IP address of our test VM2. So testvm2.contoso.com. And that DNS resolution was able to successfully complete due to the private DNS zone configuration that we have implemented on our virtual machine network. We can utilize the same for virtual machine number 2. Let's open up a command prompt. We will get the same result with the ping because testvm1.contoso, because Windows Firewall has not been set to allow inbound ICMP requests. We can see that we are resolving the correct IP address, though, which is the 10.20.20.5, as seen here, 10.20.20.5. So that ping request will time out. However, we can use NS lookup here as well. And this will be testvm1.contoso.com. And here we have the authoritative answer from our DNS, private DNS zone, which is IP address of 10.20.20.5, which matches what our test VM1 has been configured for as part of our auto registration DNS for its A host record. So we have been able to verify that we have successfully completed the name resolution record for both VM1 and VM2, and we have successfully accomplished all of the objectives for this particular lab implementation. I thank you for watching, and don't forget to click on like or subscribe if you'd like to be notified about my future videos. Thanks for watching.